Hi, my name is David Myrland. We're going to go over the freebies for the Lowell Becraft audience. I appear later today on his radio show for an interview about income taxes, of course. And I want to go through a few things here. But also, something of great importance, Section 83 authorities. This regulation, 1.83-3G, it's under Section 83. It's written to implement Section 83, and it says my cost is the value of any money or property that I paid for my paycheck. Any money or property. And the government cannot come up with an exception to the term any. And I got all the case law in the world that says the term any is all inclusive. It means all of the property. And this regulation, this is a Supreme Court case from 1989 about the term any, and it says all assets falling within the scope of the forfeiture statute for drug manufacturing are to be forfeited upon conviction with no exception existing. Because he couldn't point to an exception. They took all of his money. He said, I need attorney's fees. You can't take attorney's fees out. You need to leave me something. They said, no, the law says all assets within the scope of the forfeiture statute. He was convicted of, or it was a case about heroin manufacture and distribution, U.S. versus Monsanto. And here we have the regulation under Section 1012. Your cost is cash or other property. I don't see an exception for labor. And this is the regulation under Section 83 that says you have to apply Section 1012 and its regulations. So I'm right on the ground, my feet firmly on the ground regarding this argument that there is no exception to the term any. And the government can't talk about it. We're on the 9th and 11th circuits right now over it. And you have the importance of this equation. And I'm positive it'll be the focus of today's discussion on the radio program, is how the tax code has a definition of cost available for the person that sells their services. And the government never uses it. And it starts in Section 83. It applies to all compensation. It explains how to tax it. Second Circuit, 2011. Goodmanson versus U.S. says at the heart of this case is Section 83A, which governs the taxation of property transferred to an independent contractor or employee for services. It governs the taxation of compensation for services in regards to an income tax. And here's the importance of it. This is out of my manual about tax code section 83A. I wrote it in 1994, added 30 pages to it in 2014, published it. Codebreaker, the section 83 equation. This is the equation the government doesn't allow you to access in the computation of your income tax liabilities regarding compensation for your labor paid to you in its fair market value. It's just what my employer would pay me. It's what my customer, my client, if I'm self-employed, would pay me. And these numbers, these are 1994 numbers, $6,150, just for the purposes of the math on the tax return, because at that time, under Section 151D and 63C, my personal exemption and standard deduction, I got a deduction of $6,050, and now I think it's over $10,100. But if I'm single and nobody else could claim me as a deduction, then I get this. 151D and 63C, and then I arrive at my taxable income, which is going to be $100 right here. Anyway, this is the equation followed on a tax return, but it has nothing to do with Section 83. The first half of the equation that's supposed to be applied to calculate your taxes when all you've done is sell your labor for its fair market value. The top half of the equation is denied you. They start you here and it flows this way. That's all. You are being deprived of the top half of this equation. You have to start in Section 83 or you lose Section 83. Section 83 governs the taxation. Only the excess over the amount paid. The excess is gross income. The excess over the amount paid shall be included in gross income. And so they include the whole thing in gross income, and they don't look at the definition of cost. The excess over the amount paid goes to gross income, and they start you in gross income with everything. Those are the mechanics of the Section 83 equation. You start there because the equation flows this direction. And then you end up on a tax return reporting gross income. That's where they start with everything in gross income. As we recall, in our Section 83 authorities, gross income, except Section 61A, they club you with this all year long, year in, year out, all your life, 61A, except as otherwise provided by this subtitle. That means if it is provided in this subtitle that there's an exception, this doesn't count. Except as otherwise provided, okay, keep that in mind. 61B, for items specifically included in gross income, see Section 71 and following. That Part 2 is 71 through 90. Section 83 is in there. So I'm required by law to go to Section 83. And this might have exceptions. All this does is put the burden of proof on you. Except as otherwise provided, and they push the tax code and the regulations in form across the table to you and say, prove it. You got 90 days to go to tax court. So quick, you have to learn tax court rules. You have to learn what an argument is. You have to come up with your own arguments in the tax code. You have to prove there's exceptions. Good luck. 90 days. You have to learn how to litigate. And you have to learn, 202 tax court rules? Anyway, I go to Section 83, 71 through 90. 61B says so. And when I do that, I do it, and I find these court cases that say it explains how to tax me. It applies to all compensation for services. Take the earlier tutorial, the Section 83 authorities. The Section 83 equation is a couple hours long. Internal Revenue ruling. The IRS says Section 83 provides for the determination of the amount to be included in gross income. Section 83, look at that, it governs what is and is not gross income. There. So, very important. And the reason I point this out for the purposes of the freebies and today's show on the Becraft Hour, the Primate House. Doing business as the anti-tax movement, starring, wait for it, Pete Hendrickson, before makeup and after makeup, and you have Pete Hendrickson, the author. Hey, I can see my book from here. Hey, I'll bet you can, Pete. What are you doing with your head in a shower curtain? Because I don't see the shower curtain, do you folks? Get your head out of your shower curtain, Pete. He says Section 83 is gibberish. And that's what you get in the anti-tax movement. In the freebies today, look at this. Review.pdf. You're going to download a file off of wevgov.com/becraft.zip. wevgov.com/becraft.zip. And these documents are in that zip folder. Review.pdf is my review of Pete Hendrickson's book, or a roll of toilet paper called Cracking the Code. And you can read that at your leisure. It's linked from wevgov.com. Also, the the federal income taxation page, and all of these begin with wevgov.com/ and then becraft.zip. All these are in that folder. Back trial brief. This is the government's definition of innocence in a tax case. This is a 2014 Department of Justice trial brief from the trial of James R. Back in Alaska, the filer of several Pete Hendrickson tax returns. As you can see here, he was making over $125,000 a year during the years where he filed Pete Hendrickson tax returns as an Alyeska pipeline technician in Alaska. And the government says if you have a certain frame of mind, if there are certain facts, you're innocent. And you can read this at your leisure. Elements of the offense. And here they get into, here's what makes you guilty. Okay, here's what makes me guilty. You read the whole thing. It's a great read. It's not that long, 24 pages, but especially the highlighted part. Look at this. Ninth Circuit Model Criminal Jury Instruction 9.42. A defendant who acts in good faith on a good faith misunderstanding as to the requirements of the law does not act willfully, even if his understanding of the law is wrong or unreasonable. Well, I filed Pete Hendrickson tax returns. You say it was a misunderstanding. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to break the law. I was acting on what I thought was my responsibilities. I thought I had fulfilled my responsibilities, and that is what I was supposed to do. This, according to this, that person's not guilty because you're not willful. Nevertheless, merely disagreeing with the law does not constitute a good faith misunderstanding of the law, because all persons have a duty to obey the law whether or not they agree with it. Thus, in order to prove that the defendant acted willfully, the government must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant did not have a good faith belief that he was complying with the law. Even the people, as whacked out as it might sound to a jury, the redemption theory where people file these securities with the Treasury Department and then go overboard really and go out and try to buy luxury automobiles and whatever, way out. I can't help you. But the beginners, if all you do is file those and you don't really try to exploit them, you're just trying to vanquish a tax debt. You're sold on. It's not like you're out there burglarizing homes all the time. You're not the patent criminal. Okay, so I think a great argument can be made. And take the video, part number 3. It's posted to my YouTube channel here, and this is going to be a temporary post. But the part number 3 of the criminal intent course is posted as one of the latest videos. I'm going to close this, and we're going to go to yet another document, IRS Publication 17. This begins in 1993. The cover of Publication 17, Tax Guide for Individuals, a blue cover and blue and white, and they sent this out to every household in the United States. And right here in the middle of it, it sounds like 1.83-3G. The cost is the amount of cash and debt obligations you pay for it, and the fair market value of other property or services you provide in the transaction. Can you believe that? Okay. And then 1994, the internet happens, and now I can get a PDF copy to you. And it says the cost is the amount of cash and debt obligations you pay for it and the fair market value of other property or services you provide in the transaction. Services. So I started using this as an exhibit in tax court litigation, and then appeals on the 9th and 4th Circuits, 1994. Then we have 1995, and it's changed. Now it sounds like 1.1012-1A. The cost is the amount you pay in cash, debt obligations, or in other property. Right. Just like 1.1012, your cost is cash or other property. They changed it because I was using it as an exhibit. And scroll through here, 1996, same thing. 1997, same thing. Okay, and as you scroll through, here's the definition of fair market value of property, arm's length transaction, great. And scroll through this and you find variations, but they don't get very far from telling you your services are your property. And now this is 2006, and they're back to telling you again. The cost is the amount you pay in cash, debt obligations, or other property or services. If services are my cost, then what are you doing to me? How come you're taxing the value of my services as profit if my services are my cost? That's a good question. Anyway, have fun with this one. IRS Publication 17. Judge Dale, The Patriot Movement. No judge would make this mistake. On page 118 of this 132-page PDF document, and its own page numbers start later. See, it's got its own page numbers that are going to that won't coincide with the PDF page numbers. Like I'm on page 3 of this publication, but page 7 of the entire document. And I'm going to go up here and go 118. This document is supposed to be from Judge Dale. Judge Dale, retired judge. Oh, sure. Judges don't make mistakes like the mistake I'm about to point out to you. What is personal sovereignty? Hey, look at these court decisions. Ooh. Okay, look at these court decisions. Really? This is a judge telling you that personal sovereignty is covered by these Supreme Court decisions. Or not all 3 Supreme Court, 2 of them. What is sovereignty? It is the inherent right and prerogative of a civilized people to rule itself and to dictate all of the forms and conditions of the institution it sets up to carry out this rule. Ironically, the U.S. Supreme Court agrees with those people who claim to be sovereign citizens of the American Republic. And he cites those cases and says, what are the implications of this? Of this 2000 ruling. One ruling, he says. What are the implications of this ruling? These are 3 different cases. They're 3 totally different cases. 2000, 2011, 1993. And they have nothing to do with personal sovereignty. 3 different Bond versus United States. Bond versus United States, 2011. Carol Ann Bond put caustic substances on the mailbox handle and the doorknobs of a romantic rival that had helped her husband cheat on her. And they charged her under an act of Congress that sought to implement a treaty against using chemical weapons during warfare. And she pled in the Supreme Court. This really infringes on states' rights. Anyway, you look at the description of these 3. Here's the description of the first one. Bus passenger's canvas satchel was squeezed by an immigration officer as he shuffled the luggage on the rack above the bus seats. The officer asked Bond if he could search the canvas bag. Bond consented, and the officer discovered drugs in the bag wrapped up like a football-sized thing in duct tape, you know. And the Supreme Court said squeezing the canvas bag was an unreasonable search. This is 2000. This is a year before the planes hit the towers. So in 1 year, you can't squeeze my canvas bag, and the next year, because the planes hit the tower, you can squeeze my what? But anyway, that's those are the facts of the case for the first case cited here by Judge Dale. And here's Carol Ann Bond. She pled guilty to a charge that she had used chemical substances against another person, but she reserved the rights to appeal the claim that federal government was overreaching by applying that federal statute to a local and unremarkable offense. Lower court said she lacked standing for 10th Amendment challenge because she's not a state. The Supreme Court reversed and remanded, saying that if Bond is affected by the statute, she has the right to make challenges to it. In the third case, Bond was convicted of drug charges and filed a motion to vacate the conviction based on ineffective counsel regarding procedural lapses. The Seventh Circuit said district court should have heard the ineffective counsel claim on the merits and remanded. Totally different case. Judges don't make mistakes like this and then say implications of this decision. This Supreme Court ruling, well, one of them is the Seventh Circuit and the other are totally separate instances that have nothing to do with one another, and yet this individual from the Patriot movement claims to be a judge and can't be. The Supreme Court held that the American people are in fact sovereign and not the states or the government. The court went on to define that local, state, and federal law enforcement officers were committing unlawful actions against sovereign people by the enforcement of the laws and are personally liable for their actions. You'll find nothing even closely resembling a law school where the same thing is even taught as what's discussed in these cases. Night and day, nothing whatsoever to do with one another. His notion and any one of those three cases. Nothing. Man, be careful, everybody. Meteor.pdf. Hey, Your Honor, my client, and this is on appeal, my client was cited for drunk driving, but come on, his car was hit by a meteor. You understand, Your Honor. His car was hit by a meteor. And sure enough, his car was hit by a meteor, but the court said, well, you're out drunk driving. It doesn't matter that you were hit by a meteor. You blew over the blood alcohol limit. But there's somebody policing the streets for you. Hit them with a meteor. Money. How would I, as a code pleader, address the issue of, can the municipal government really accept Federal Reserve notes? Can you, let me see, this is written on the pretext of, for Joe Lunchbucket, driver's license suspension for failure to pay a traffic ticket. And he says, you're demanding Federal Reserve notes. Can you do that? And this is written as an example of how somebody might argue it, what lawful money is, and the fact the government can't accept non-lawful money, gold and silver, and here's how they create money out of thin air. And so it must amount to infringement on Congress's authority under Article 1, Section 8, and therefore it violates these criminal statutes. This was argued one way to a municipal court south of Seattle in the town of SeaTac, a little municipality, against a conviction. Just, did you engage in crimes when you accepted my $392 Federal Reserve notes for the fine? Did you commit these crimes against me or with me? Did you involve me in all this misconduct on your part? Please instruct me. And rather than get into it, the court vacated the conviction. It was a guilty plea on a misdemeanor charge, and rather than talk about it, they vacated the conviction. Didn't even ask him to vacate the conviction. Just said, are you a criminal? Did you involve me in all these crimes? That's how I would plead the money issue. Oh, I'm going to file the redemption. Hey, I'm going to file personal securities with the Secretary of the Treasury, and I'm going to go to prison for it. Look at the date, July 18th of 2017, U.S. District Court, Eastern District of Tennessee at Knoxville. This just happened. Here's an indictment. Somebody went for the redemption. Nonsense. You know, the anti-tax movement. I try to keep people out of prison. Nothing I say is legal advice, ever. I'll teach you, what I know about the tax code. I'll teach you what you can learn about the tax code. And I know some whoppers of arguments, but You know, if you're going to go for some of this, you know, you're really stepping off the dock into deep water. And I can't help you. So understand. You want to look out for 18 USC 541. Here's money laundering. Okay. Because 541 carries like 30 years per count. And it's filing fictitious obligations with the U.S. government. It's the highest financial crime you can commit with the government. But anyway, here you go. There's an indictment fresh off the grand jury foreperson's hot little hands. And here's the review of Pete Hendrickson's book called Cracking the Code by yours truly, David R. Myrland. Take from Caesar.us. Just says go see wevgov.com for content. And this is on the website as well. And all these are in the zip file you can download as Lowell Becraft's Audience Today on his new radio show. And I'm glad to give you these freebies. Go to wevgov.com. As you get into the website, you'll see that you can access the let's see what you can access here. I go to the in here on the left hand page up to here to YouTube 2. The link for YouTube 2 takes me to my YouTube channel, and there are my videos. There's the criminal intent course, tax code from the ground up, a 2003 video shoot where I explain how perfect the law is using statute only, and then I show you the tricks they pull to turn it into the IRS. And here's my latest interview, July 21st, with Lowell Becraft on LWRN. So there you have today's freebies. Hope you enjoy those. My name is David Myrland. Again, none of this is legal advice, and I'll be taking this down in just a couple days. Get the zip file while it's there, and I hope you enjoy those freebies. Take care.